All right, I am here with Brandon Warne. That's doing Access Twins. Brandon, how are you doing?
Hey, can't complain. Good weather. Got some baseball on right now, and so I really can't complain at all.
So you're watching baseball too. I'm actually watching the Yankees game on my other TV. Uh, how did you get into baseball?
So actually, it's kind of funny. I was 7 years old when my grandma had it on at the house. They had a TV in their kitchen, just a tiny little like 12-inch color model that they had on while they would eat and cook and all that. And so they'd have the Twins game on sometimes when I'd be over for dinner because they lived two doors down from us. And I just kind of fell in love with it from there. It was in 1993, so if people can do math, they can figure out that I'm 35 years old, and that's just where it started. And it took on a level of passion that I probably would have never imagined, to the point where I was a huge fan first, and now I do it for work. It's pretty cool. Not many people get to do what I do, and I'm very, very thankful for that. I'm very, very proud of that. But I also like to give back however I can. And so if anybody's listening to this that wants information, or rather maybe mentorship, or even just a little bit of editing, I'm more than happy to help people out.
Oh, well, that's good because there's always people that just try to get their foot in the door and they just can't get it. What did you basically do to just take that first step? Because obviously, uh, there was a lot of building from where you started to where you are now. Just what did you do to get that first step?
I actually got lucky. I went to journalism school and got an internship with Baseball Prospectus the summer after I graduated. So I was doing editing and kind of the dirty work for them, transcribing and that sort of thing. And from there, I jumped to Fangraphs, wrote a few columns for them, and kind of caught the attention of a place here in the Twin Cities where I started covering the Twins for them on a regular basis. And it's just kind of been an organic growth. Some people start as a sorry, my daughter's going to get involved here.
Oh, that's fine.
Some people start going to a small market and working their way up. And for me, I was in the big market, but I started with a small job and worked my way up. I just covered the Twins for an outlet here called 1500 ESPN, and just kind of went from there. Once that lasted a year, and then they had some budget stuff, so they cut me. I joined a place called Zone Coverage, which was a startup, and covered the Twins for them for, I want to say, 5 years before the pandemic hit and things were kind of going bad for them at that point. And so now I'm just doing my own thing, because once you've been doing it for a while, it's really just about work ethic and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I love the work ethic, and it's fine if your daughter talks. I mean, I'm not professional in any sense, so I understand. And that's how
We're
life
doing
works.
what we can.
Yeah. So when was it that you decided, hey, I can make a full time gig out of just following the Twins for a living?
Well, luckily, when I graduated, I was managing a UPS store, and I worked there for 4 years afterward. And then I started working at a company called Sport Radar in downtown Minneapolis, doing data entry and basically just watching sports games and collecting that data. And then we create APIs and all that stuff that places like Yahoo Sports and whatever buy from us. And then I got transferred into their content creating department. A job opened up about 10 days into my stint there, where we were creating content for NCAA.com. And then the job just kind of evolved from there to now we're doing game notes for Fox. And so I'm doing that in addition to what I'm doing on the side. So I'm kind of piecing it together between the two. But I was really lucky to get in when I did, where I did, to the point where I can be involved in baseball, especially in two different places. As it went with Access Twins, it was just kind of a thing on a lark to see if I could make some money with Substack and their platform, which has kind of emerged over the last year or so. And so far so good. I took basically the summer off last year because the Twins weren't playing anyway. They didn't start playing until, it was July, I think late July.
Mhm.
And so I kind of decided at the end of the season I was going to take a chance, see if I could make some money and see if I could make this thing work. And it's kind of a sweat equity thing, and so far I've been pleased.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked around at Access Twins, and I mean, I'm liking what it is, and I'm not even a Twins fan. So, I mean, I don't know how many people you get the crossover part, but I mean, I just love baseball and just what you guys are putting out over there. I mean, I'm really enjoying it.
Well, and I don't know if the broader appeal is going to be in the future of the website. You know, it's always going to be called Access Twins, but I've written a few things here. I like to do a series called "These Are the Things I Think I Know," and it's basically how I see the entire league at the beginning of the season. You know, what I think of the Yankees on April 1st, what I think of the Red Sox, whoever. And so, you know, I'll kind of gauge statistics on broader appeal stuff because I'm a baseball fan in general. I just happen to know the Twins better than I do other teams, and you know, we'll go from there. It'll become whatever the market will dictate. It doesn't have to be a moneymaker for me. If it never becomes a huge moneymaker, that's fine. It's more of an outlet to keep myself sharp in case another job comes around someday in the future. And at the same time, I get to work for and answer to myself, which is pretty freeing. So I kind of like that.
Now, who was your favorite Twin growing up? Because obviously you said you've been watching the Twins basically your whole life. I always loved Joe Mauer, personally. I don't know. Obviously, I know he's been a big guy in the Twins for the past X amount of years, even since after retirement. Who was your favorite Twins player?
Well, growing up, because I started watching in the mid 90s, it was Kirby Puckett because he was just kind of the face and the identity of the team back then. And then it just kind of transitioned from there. I mean, Joe Mauer, it was kind of weird for me covering the team because Joe Mauer was basically the last player that I had rooted for as a fan before I made my full-time switch over to media, you know, no cheering in the press box and that sort of thing. So I kind of always did really like Joe Mauer for that reason. And because, too, he carried himself in a manner that was definitely respectable. Every time you ask someone about a Joe Mauer story, they'll tell you one that makes you like him even more, which is pretty cool. So at various times, I've liked different guys. Jason Kubel for a while was a guy I really liked. And in fact, I have an autographed game worn jersey of his hanging in my office. So sometimes when I'll do Periscope chats or I recently finished my office with a wall, I posted pictures, and a lot of people noticed the Kubel jersey. Not exactly a superstar by any means, but he was a pretty highly touted prospect coming up. He tore his knee in the AFL back in 2005, and his career was kind of waylaid from there. But that was a guy who I really liked too coming up. So it's kind of been different guys, not always the superstars or the best players. Sometimes I like the guys who are more role players or guys who have some steam, but just never become the player they were cracked up to be with their prospect rankings and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so who was or who is, I mean, it could be someone current, just who is like the best person to connect with in your eyes?
You mean as far as who I've talked to in the clubhouse?
Yes, it could be a current player, it could be a past player, just somebody that when you were in the clubhouse, because I know obviously you can't be now, just who was one or a few guys that just made it feel like, hey, they're the leaders, they know what's going on, they understand what your job is and how you have to do it as well.
Well, I developed pretty strong relationships with Phil Hughes and then also Chris Jimenez. So Phil Hughes, obviously much more prominent role on the team. He was not only a starting pitcher, but their best pitcher for at least a couple of years there. Mm-hmm. And then Chris Jimenez was a backup catcher, but he was the kind of guy you could go to anytime you needed any information that would come out of that clubhouse. He'd be good for it. And so I really enjoyed talking to him. We did a short series called Catching Up with the Catcher. And then when he went to the Cubs, I actually caught up with him at Wrigley Field. I did a few road series in, I think it was 2018 or 2019. And anyhow, he was with the Cubs at that time, and so I got to go to Wrigley Field. And I actually surprised him in the clubhouse, and we caught up and chatted for a while. And it was just like old times. It was just like we picked up where we left off. And so I love guys like that. I have an affinity for backup catchers because they see the game in a different way. Those are your future managers of of the big leagues and that sort of thing. And so Bobby Wilson and I actually forged a pretty good relationship too. He was the backup the next year and got probably more playing time than they wanted after a few guys got hurt. But yeah, I like catchers especially, and the backup guys seem to be the ones who've been around for a while and can tell you all kinds of stuff that they've seen, because as you know, the catcher sees the game from a different angle than everybody else does.
Yeah, I mean, I always had an affinity for the catchers. I grew up a Yankees fan. Growing up, even though I'm young, I'm only 23 right now.
Wow.
I always loved looking back at Yogi Berra.
Yep.
And just seeing how he did it, even with the Yogiisms and everything. Phil Hughes was an answer I wasn't expecting. I was figuring it was going to be somebody else. Just
tremendous clubhouse guy. Yeah, he's just a great clubhouse guy. He had lots to say and was very personable. And I think too, no disrespect to New York or the Yankees, I think it was good for him to get out of that market. I just think he needed a fresh start, and things weren't perfect for him in Minnesota either. He got hurt. He had thoracic outlet, and he couldn't match that first season that he had, and it just kind of became, a problem to the point where he got DFA'd and traded. But he was always a good go-to in the clubhouse, and we did a video as well where, it was just it was like catching up with Mr. Hughes or something like that. I can't remember what we called it, but a lot of fun to talk to. Really good guy.
Yeah, he always seemed, and I don't know if it was just because of how, obviously I follow the Yankees more, just the way the Yankees have prep their guys coming through the system with the New York media. It just seemed like he always knew what to say and how to say it correctly. And obviously you've had a lot more experience with him.
They prep those guys really well in the minors too. I think especially in the Yankees system, to let them know what they're getting into. And the media, I mean, it can be difficult in New York, but I've met a lot of those guys, Sweeney Murdy and Mark Feinsand and even Lindsay Adler. Like, they're not really like intense, terrible people to deal with, but I think the scrutiny also comes from the fans expecting excellence. You win, 22 championships, but you haven't won one in over a decade. I don't know, whatever the number is. I think it's 22.
27.
Oh, it's 27 now. Okay. Yeah, so that just comes with an expectation of excellence that the team has not, at least in the eyes of a lot of diehard fans, lived up to, and that can be difficult for players to have to deal with.
Yeah. So what has been the most fun and the most difficult part of just covering the Twins? Obviously, growing up as a fan, you get into the press that first time you're in the press room, just, wow, I'm here. I've read these guys. Just what was it just like that first time getting into the press room?
So the first game I covered was at the end of the 2010 season, and I was just there to get a soundbite from Ron Gardenhire for Baseball Prospectus about what it was like playing in a new stadium after they closed the Metrodome, at least to baseball. And I stood in the Toronto Blue Jays dugout. I listened to Cito Gaston talk because it was his last series managing the Blue Jays. And I remember watching Orlando Hudson holding court behind the batting cage because he'd been a Blue Jay before, and so he had some guys that he knew from the team. And I just remember, feeling it was either late September or early October, and it was a little cool but nice, like nice for the Twin Cities. And I just remember thinking, well, why wouldn't I want to do this for a living, or why wouldn't I want to do this for a regular job? And so since then, I probably covered 200 games. And, it's cool. What I like is building relationships, and it's not just with the players, because I've built some pretty good relationships with players in the past. I mean, I even still talk to a lot of those guys. Ryan O'Rourke is a former lefty who was with the Mets, I want to say last year, and then retired. I still talk to him semi-frequently, and I still talk to Trevor Plouffe every now and then on Twitter, or we'll shoot a text back and forth. But you build those relationships to the point where now that I haven't been in the clubhouse for a couple seasons, I can go back and I'll have facial recognition from Rocco Baldelli, and I'll have facial recognition from, I'm trying to think of who else has been on the team for a while. I mean, Nelson Cruz probably. There's a few guys where if I go into the clubhouse, they're going to recognize me and know that I'm there to do a job. And then what I hope is to ask them questions that they're not gonna think are stupid. I'm not gonna waste their time. And so it's to me it's important to be good at that job and be someone that those players trust, because they're gonna tell you stories that they might not tell someone else. And you've got to juggle stories like talking to Logan Morrison and Ryan Presley about their dads who passed away when they had just barely been in the big leagues. I think their names are both Tom, actually. That's why I said Tom. And so if you're going to write these stories that are delicate or raw or difficult, you got to build these relationships and let those players know they trust you, because they're going to tell you things that are very near and dear to them, and they don't want them misrepresented.
All right, yeah, I could totally see where you're coming from there, because I mean, I'm in Florida now, so just seeing the different levels of where national media covers sports. I mean, you have some writers where it feels like, okay, they're just writing the byline and just reading it off of AP. And then you have some other writers that I like. You mentioned Lindsay Adler. I love what she's doing at The Athletic.
She's terrific.
Yeah. I have some questions about this current crop of twins.
Mm-hmm.
First off, does it just feel like what everybody else says nationally, that this season doesn't matter, or the regular season in general doesn't matter until they make the playoffs and prove they can win there? Or is it just, hey, we have a fun team, they're going to win a lot of games, they're going to make the playoffs, and then it's just a crapshoot at that point?
Well, they're going through a tough stretch, kind of like the Yankees did to start the season. It's just been a little more extended, to the point where fans are kind of getting to really question every single decision that gets made that doesn't work. And I think a frustrating part of that is that a lot of fans think if something doesn't work, the opposite of that would have worked. And so if you walk a guy and then the next guy hits a double, well, you should have just pitched to the guy before, even though the other guy before is the silver slugger or the defending MVP or whatever. Or you have two guys warming up in the bullpen, you bring in the lefty, he gives up a home run, and the righty probably would have gotten him out. And so there's been a lot of second guessing, which has been really frustrating. To your other point on the larger scale, yeah, the frustration is definitely there. The Twins are 0 for their last 18 in the postseason. Their last win came in 2004 when Johan Santana beat the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium in Game 1 of the division series. And it's been a long road. And what's difficult for fans and players and the front office and staff and all that to differentiate is that the fans have stayed largely the same. It's the same people who are fans year in and year out, but it's different players. It's a different cast of characters. It was the Torrey Hunter twins, then the Joe Mauer twins, then the Brian Dozier twins, and they're now, whoever you want to call them, probably the Byron Buxton twins right now, because he's really taken off. But each of those guys, if you were to divvy those losses up individually, you're talking about 4.5 losses per guy. That's basically a series. It's more about how bad they were from 2011 to 2018. And I think a playoff appearance or two in there, but it was like wild card games against the Yankees that they never really had a chance in. And it's so amazing how in 2010 they didn't have an ace. That was the big issue. It was Carl Pavano, who Yankee fans are familiar with, and Francisco Liriano on the comeback trail, but they didn't have an ace. And then they were so bad for so long. And the second they got good again, it was, hey, you don't have an ace. And I was like, no. You've been bad for 6 years. It's time to just start getting good again before you open up these same things. And at the same time, too, people they have a one-track mind. I don't know if it's like football fans where they think it's a copycat league and you got to have either a top three like the Nationals had a couple years ago, or a knockout bullpen like the Royals did 5 or 6 years ago, or just a nasty offense. But when it doesn't work, they say, well, that wasn't enough. When 29 teams go home without a trophy every year, and about 10 of them are really, really good teams. It's just the way it goes. So in some ways, 18 games is a lot, but in other ways, 18 games over what will now be 18 seasons, it happens. I still shake it off, and people get kind of ticked off about that. But again, it comes out to about a game a season, and these things happen. What are you going to do? You just go back to the well and hope that the next time will be more successful. And at the end of the day, too, people get mad when you don't take a step forward the next year. Well, every year starts out fresh. You don't automatically get back to where you were the year before and then get to build on it. And we're seeing that come to roost with the Twins right now with 11 wins and 18 losses through 29 games. That's not what they've been about under Rocco Baldelli. And there's no guarantee they make the playoffs this year and then win a playoff game or win a playoff series or whatever. And I think fans get that linear idea of how improvement looks, and they get real tied up in that. So if they win one playoff game this year, that will be an improvement. Then suddenly it won't be enough when you need to enjoy the ride as opposed to waiting for the destination.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, I'm like you. I think, hey, it's a little overblown. I understand the story of it is one thing, but just it's hard to get to the playoffs. I don't think teams or fans of teams actually get to understand and appreciate that the Twins, they're in a competitive division most of the time. You have teams like the Indians, you have the Royals that were a powerhouse for a few years, you have the White Sox that are building. It just seems like, oh, that team, they're always going to win. They got to do it in the playoffs now. I think it's just
you can have an October of heartbreak, but you still got a summer of enjoyment, and that matters too. If you enjoy 6 months and then you're upset after 3 or 2 games like the Twins have been the last few years, I mean, you got to put it into perspective. That was a fun summer and a crappy fall. It's just like being a Minnesota native. Winter's coming no matter what you do.
Yeah. Now, this might be a question that's me coming from New York, just trying to be that guy. Is Rocco Baldelli on the hot seat after a couple seasons of, hey, he's doing good in the regular season? As we said, the Twins aren't getting it done, and he's just off to a slow start now. Does it feel like, hey, maybe his job is in jeopardy, or is it just, you know what, he has some time, these guys are going to correct themselves over 162?
Yeah, no, he's their guy. I don't feel any sort of thought that there's anything going on. I mean, at the end of the day, he's won 60+% of the games he's managed, and he's only managed 5 postseason games, and they managed to kick those in just kick those away in just impressive meltdown fashion. I think he's learning on the fly. I think he learned from the first postseason against the Yankees that sometimes you have to manage your bullpen backwards in October, and that's where you get to the 6th inning and Adam Ottavino comes in, and then you work your way backwards to Aroldis Chapman, as opposed to bringing in a guy more towards the front of the bullpen, whether it's Luis Cessa or Adam Warne, to kind of invoke some names from the past. Meanwhile, Rocco goes to guys like Cody Stashak and plans to build to Taylor Rogers, and that works in the regular season. That's what you do in the regular season. But you need to win the front end of games to win postseason games, and worry about holding it down if you're leading after 6, as opposed to playing from behind after 6. And it's all a process. I mean, Joe Girardi wasn't good at it at first, I'm sure, and Don Mattingly, and I mean, Aaron Boone's got all kinds of grief for how he manages, and the Yankees have been good under him. They just haven't won a World Series, and it's a tough marketplace when they expect to win the World Series every year. There's no denying that. And I think too, with Rocco fans are like, okay, well, what's next? What's the next step? And also, 2020 ruined a lot of fans' brains with 60 games. The expectations were changed with each game meaning more than double what they meant in a regular season. So it's wild. Fans have been just crazy the last few weeks here, and I think it's runoff from 2020.
Now, what has Byron Buxton been doing different? Because it seems like he has just evolved from just being, hey, that's that speedy guy at the top of the lineup, to now he's an MVP candidate in a lot of people's minds. Just what have you seen watching him day in and day out, just that has differed from what he has been?
He's doing a little better job of laying off the pitches he was chasing with 2 strikes, and the sliders outside that can kind of be the Achilles heel for a lot of toolsy players coming up. He's hitting for power, which started more so last year. Like, he had a 2 on base percentage, but he slugged almost 600, and he's carried that into this season. Everything he's hitting is on the nose, on the button. He's doubles, homers, the occasional triple. And people are wondering where the stolen bases are. Well, if you don't hit singles, you can't steal. And if you don't walk, you can't really steal. And you're in scoring position from first base, basically. So he's just not stealing that many bases. But he's absolutely stinging the baseball. He's getting himself into better counts. And I think the walks will come out of respect. But he's batting now in the top part of the order. He was the number 9 hitter for pretty much all last season. Even with how much power he's hitting for, then they moved him up a little bit. He's now hitting leadoff or third, depending on if Josh Donaldson is playing on any given day and if the Twins are facing a lefty. And he's just taken off. It's kind of like what the Twins had hoped Aaron Hicks would do, but what he didn't do until he went to New York. And again, I know he's struggling this year, but it was very clear there was talent there that he could put together to the point where he was probably going to be worth more than John Ryan Murphy in a trade, and the Twins just bailed. And again, that's the old front office, but good for the Yankees for identifying that. And it happened with the Twins with Carlos Gomez too. They traded him for J.J. Hardy, which was a pretty good return, and then they bailed on Hardy after a year. They need to learn from those lessons. And again, too, like I said, for front office. But these toolsy guys take some time. Torrey Hunter was a very good example that it took him 2 or 3 years before he really hit the ground running as a competent everyday big leaguer. And at the same time, you learn from your mistakes. And I think they've done that with Buxton. And so far, so good. If he can stay healthy, you're looking at a guy who, maybe top 10 in the AL MVP. I'm not going to say he's going to win it because, Mike Trout obviously still exists. But he's going to put together a nice season if he stays healthy. He's in a good place right now.
And then to jump to the pitching side, is Jose Berrios a top 10 pitcher now? I know he's been pitching very well this year, and he has extended it from last year too. But just has he taken that step? Because it seems like whenever he's on, I have my eyes are going to Twins games now compared to where I'm like, Michael Pineda, J.A. Happ, just guys. Decent, competent pitchers. Did Berrios take that leap this year?
I think he's closer to 10th through 20th. That next year down.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the physical skills and work ethic are there. And at times he's looked like that guy. It's just, I think it's just a matter of consistency. And it's kind of, easy to say that without really backing it up. But he has this stretch every single year where it's 4 to 6 starts with a 6 or 7 ERA. And if he can avoid that pitfall, you're looking at a guy who's going to sustain a 3.2 ERA. As opposed to a 3.8 or a 4. And there's nothing wrong with those ERAs in the previous run environments that they played in. But this year with pitching being so much more dominant with strikeouts and, the bats have just been slower to come around league-wide, that might naturally slide him down to a 3.5 ERA. But with that said, it's not unthinkable that he ascends to that top 10 because you've got a lot of older guys, too, that are probably going to experience some, drop back to the rest of the pack. Your Clayton Kershaw's, your Max Scherzers, and those sorts of guys. So getting into the top 10 will be a little easier than it's been in the last few years. But with that said, I feel more comfortable with him around 12 to 15 or, maybe 20 if you're a little more down on him. I don't think he's quite top 10. I think he can get there, but I'm not comfortable with that yet.
Yeah, I can understand that. There's a lot of quality pitchers still in the league. I just think he's at that 10 through 15 tier where you can mix and match whoever you want, but he's right there.
Right.
And then one final question before I let you go. Where do you think the Twins end up? Do you think, as we're recording, we have Chicago dealing with a couple of key injuries to their outfield, Cleveland selling off throughout the last couple of years. Do you think this is the Twins division to win still?
I still do, actually. And they're going to finish May by playing almost exclusively AL Central opponents. And so they're going to need to make some hay while it's there to be made, so to speak. And while I don't see them necessarily winning 94 or 95 games like I did to start this season, I see maybe closer to 89 or 90, which should be enough to win the division because Chicago's going to take a step back, and Cleveland, I think, is going to be fine but not great. I think Kansas City is going to do enough to take a dent out of everybody in that division. And I don't think Detroit is going to be quite as bad as they've been so far. I think they're 8-22 or 9-22, something like that. They've got some fun young pitching, Tariq Skubal and Casey Mize, and then a few other guys coming up. We'll see if they acclimate Spencer Torkelson into their mix. And their offense, I think, has got a few fun pieces. I think Jonathan Scope and Jeimer Candelario can all be fairly interesting. And so I think they can win, 70 games. And again, too, that probably eliminates the possibility of a 95, 96 win team winning this division and probably bumping that back to 89, 90, maybe 92 on the high end. So I think the Twins still win the division. I still have the utmost confidence that they're going to turn it around. But I'm quickly becoming one of the last people on that bandwagon. But that's okay. I kind of like the solitude and the loneliness, so to speak.
Yeah, it gives you a lot more room on the bandwagon.
I need it. It's like when I get in the airplane, I need that leg room, so it's fine. I don't mind.
All right, Brandon, thank you for coming on. Just tell everybody where they can find you all around social media.
Okay, so find me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE or at Access Twins. The link for Access Twins is accesstwins.substack.com. It will ask you for an email address. It'll ask you for money. If you give me your email address, you will get automatic access to every single thing that I write, all the podcasts that are coming out here in the future and videos. But if you donate money, you get into a Slack channel that I've created for all the subscribers/patrons. And also, anybody who does $50 or more is going to get a free Access Twins hat that my aunt has made. They're very, very nice. I've been wearing mine pretty much every single day, mowing the lawn, going out to the mall, and that sort of thing. So no pressure to give up money at this point. I'm going to let this thing build a little longer. However, if you donate money, I'm more than happy to return the favor with a hat or something of that nature.
All right, Brandon, thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, especially in the middle of a Twins game, which you have your focus on as well.
No problem.
But again, just thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll talk to you very soon.
Anytime. Let's catch up again soon. I'd love to do that, maybe in advance of a Yankee series or something.
Oh, most definitely.
You bet.